Urban explorers, what is the creepiest we're not alone experience you've had? I was on the other end of this. There was an abandoned nunnery on the coast behind a suburban development, a very creepy but beautiful place. I loved it because it had an entirely stone chapel. Any sound you made inside had true reverb and echo a second long almost. I brought a friend in to make some recordings in the dead of night. As we're leaving, a group of laughing neighborhood kids came in on us crouched in the dark over a bunch of electronics. They ran faster than I've seen anyone run before. My friends and I were exploring an abandoned restaurant in this beach town one winter night. We snuck in through a broken window on the shore side to avoid being spotted by any cars driving by. Overall, inside it was your typical abandoned restaurant, but was still really cool to check out. There was a long bar, tables tossed about, etc. We walked downstairs into a wine cellar and started walking through the labyrinth of hallways. The basement was deceptively larger than we would have expected for a beachside restaurant. Anyway, we wander into this room off one of the hallways and shine our flashlight in the corner, and we see an unmade bed cot with all of the trappings of someone currently living there, a safety razor next to the mirror, random other belongings. Full stop. Our stomachs immediately dropped as we realized we were currently in someone's living quarters, and promptly noped the frick out of there. To this day we still don't know if the person was hiding in the basement with us, waiting for us to leave, or if we stumbled on it while they were out and about. Either way, we couldn't shake the feeling of being watched by someone from the shadows of that basement. I've only been brave enough to do the urban exploration once. Well, twice I guess, but the same location both times. Near an apartment I used to live in, there was an old hotel that was abandoned and boarded up. One night, a friend was over and hanging out with me. We had a few drinks and, in a moment of inebriated bravado, a little tipsy, but not full down drunk at all, we decided that exploring the old hotel would be a brilliant idea. We made our way over and explored a couple of the rooms. The doors were on the outside, so it may have been a motel rather than a hotel. I'm not sure the difference. The rooms were moldy, dirty, broken down, but didn't have anything unexpected. There was some graffiti on the walls and some used condoms on the ground, EWW, in the rooms. Then, we went into the office lobby area. As soon as we walked in, we froze. There, in the distance, in the darkened lobby, was a man staring at us. He didn't move, just stood there and stared us down. We bolted, quickly, and ran at a full sprint back to my apartment. Thankfully, the man, homeless, drug addict, we didn't know, didn't follow us. A few days later, my friend was back over during the day. We were talking about the experience with the hotel and, this time spurred on by daylight, decided to look in the hotel lobby again. When we entered, the man was still there, standing in the same spot, staring us down, and made of cardboard. We had gotten freaked out by a cardboard cutout hawking the hotel's website and online bookings. Oh, I love this one. So there's a moderately well-known abandoned mental hospital close to my town. A few months back a few friends and I went to explore a bit. Not a rare thing for people here. We found this setup of a few folding chairs and a couple of old mattresses with blankets and whatever else you'd imagine on them. We chilled there for about 10 minutes and then went on with our adventure upwards. Pretty uneventful from then on. A few really cool graffiti murals, awesome view from the roof. When we were coming back down we passed through the room and all the chairs were folded up and neatly stacked against the wall and the beds were made, or at least as close to that as it could have been. Whoever did it would have most likely known that we were there and waited for us to leave to do all of that, as it was only a time frame of about 45 minutes. No threats or anything, just an eerie feeling of being watching in an abandoned mental hospital. So I take a lot of time lapses of nature and stuff. One clear night I decided to drive out to the middle of nowhere to get a time lapse of the stars. I found a lake that seemed like a cool spot to shoot and set up. About 20 minutes in I hear a noise and look up to see a light above me. Sure enough, a drone is right above me just hovering. It freaked me out so I booked it out of there. I later learned I was trespassing on government property. I live in a big US West Coast city, in a neighborhood where most homes go right up to the sidewalk property line and have a yard and back. My place is the opposite, house is at the back of the lot. Front yard keeps me buffered from street noise. It's a nice, dark little oasis in the city. My house has a double door split door, so the top can open independently of the bottom. I often leave the top open when the weather's nice. I'm sitting on the couch in the living room, all of 15 feet from the door. It's nighttime. I'm reading, and the door's more or less directly in front of me. The porch light's off. Yard's dark. The only lights from the dimmed reading lamp I'm using. The wind keeps blowing the top part of the door open, closed, open, closed. I'm used to it. Happens all the time. Doesn't sound out of place. Until the door kind of misses a beat. I don't hear it thud closed. I look up, and it's perfectly still. Only open 2 or 3 inches. It's one of those WTF are my eyes seeing moments. There's like a 15-mile-per-hour wind outside. How is the top part of the door partially open and perfectly still? Then my eyes or brain recognizes it, the outline of a hoodie, drawstrings, hood up. In that instant I am frozen and my heart is pounding. Someone is literally standing right there, hood up, holding my door open. I can't see his face, but he sees me noticing because he says, "You should keep your doors locked." Motherfucking what? Now my adrenaline kicks in. I jump up shouting. He bolts. I get the porch light on in time to see him running out the gate. I still wonder how long he'd been standing there or WTF he was doing thinking. The door has been very freaking locked since then. So there's this building in my city that has been abandoned for over a decade. The building itself covers over 40 acres, so it's pretty well known by explorers that if the cops come they won't search for you inside but wait for you to come out. The second time I went to explore this building we were looking for a way inside. Keep in mind this is taking place early in the morning, maybe 3 AM. We come across this section of the building that was a large outdoor amphitheater. We walked down to the center and went up to the boarded up windows, and ever so faintly on the other side of the wood you could hear someone talking to themselves. We got the frick out of there. I explored part of an old Nike or Atlas missile site one night with a few friends. As we were leaving, someone started shining a laser pointer at us from the woods. Somehow, we couldn't actually see where they were, even though that's usually pretty easy to do with laser pointers. I still wonder if it was just a laser pointer and not a laser sight instead. If it was a missile sight, I'd go with possible guard and laser sight. Rural experience. A graveyard behind my high school in the middle of cornfields was a go-to driving around spot because we had nothing else to do as teenagers. Early on in the school year a lady parked her car in the back of the cemetery and walked into the cornfield and shot herself in the head. The graveyard is super old and on a gravel side road, so no one noticed for like a week. Kids who were running cross country smelt something rancid and reported it. Once it was investigated the truth came out. It was weird. She wasn't even from my area. She drove around 2 hours here and had no relation to anything around the area. No note was left. It was really bizarre. Anyways, we were driving around months later telling the story to some younger students, really trying to freak them out. But when we turned the corner to pull in the graveyard a random car was parked in the back of the yard. We slowly rolled up on it while all of us were losing our minds, only to see a topless woman sit up from the backseat followed by a topless man. Awkward, but that was the tightest my butt had been clenched up to that point of life. Who the fricks in a car in a fricking graveyard? I spent 2004 to 2009 living in a dilapidated warehouse that had a space over it converted into an apartment. In exploring the warehouse beneath it before moving in, a buddy of mine and I were discussing how the place smelled and was haunted. In making jokes about it we started laughing when something shattered on the wall near us. We were seriously startled and contemplating what it could have been when someone shouts "Shut the frick up" and there's a homeless man throwing what I assume is a second bottle at us from across the space. In a non-threatening way, I calmly state, "Are you sure you should be in here?" He waves something at me and yells at me to call the police if I don't like it. There was an old house down the road from where we lived in the country. It was broken and falling apart, but as a kid that was like the biggest draw for our curiosity. We decided to travel through the brush and go inside it on one of our bike rides, and we found loads of neat stuff. magazines, old busted antique looking furniture. It was actually pretty cool. We knew from stories our dad told us about the house that there should have been a few nice apple trees around, so we wandered outside to go find them. But what we found was a new van hidden around a bushy area and covered with sticks. Remnants of a camp area with smoke still coming from the campfire, but no one that we could see. We noped out of there and told our parents. Turned out it was someone who had run the border and was camping out in the woods. No other details were relayed to us about it, but pretty creepy for our 12-year-old selves. I decided to climb a tree with a friend in the middle of a large college campus at 2 AM. Sat up there chatting a while. Then a car pulled up and parked nearly right below us. We go silent. One guy gets out. Driver stays put with the engine running. 5 minutes pass. A whistle comes from behind a nearby building, and one is returned from the guy below us. A few minutes later someone walks up. There's a short exchange. We can hear and see everything. The guy walks away and the car leaves. We are silent. 10 minutes pass. We hand gestured and decide it's go time. We dropped out of the tree and ran. Technically those guys should have felt not alone, but instead we did for weeks. We were so sure we had been spotted. Great. Next time I am doing anything suspicious I am going to be scanning the trees for random people. There was a decommissioned naval base in the town I grew up in. We used to sneak into the old barracks, and one time I turned the corner into the hallway and found a lit cigarette on the ground. There was nobody around from what I could see or hear. We noped the frick out pretty shortly after that. My friends and I explored an abandoned psych hospital in Suffolk County, Long Island. After checking out the building with a cafeteria and bowling alley, we decided to leave by exiting through the patient room window that we entered in. I realized I had left my flashlight back in an adjacent patient room, so I told my friends that I would quickly grab it. When I went to the other patient room to retrieve it, I noticed that the door was closed and a light flicker was occurring on the other side of it. I noped out of there so fast. This was back in summer 2012. Every morning my mum used to take me and my brother to our grandparents while she went to work. My grandparents lived in a really isolated rural zone. Near my grandparents' house there was a huge abandoned factory, and I've always wanted to go to see what was in there. So I begged my uncle, he lived at my grandparents' house, to explore that building. He said yes. So we went to the building and searched for an opening to get inside. Once inside, we started to look around the place, and obviously found nothing except old machines and stuff like that. When we was about to leave, we heard noises coming from upstairs, and then steps. We saw a shadow coming towards us, so we got the feck out of there running. A few days later, I was at my grandparents' house with all my cousins. Suddenly, the neighbors rang our doorbell and told us that there was someone breaking into our back garden. My uncle went out to check while one of my cousins called 112, local police number. Soon after the call, my uncle came back inside and he told us that he saw that guy that had broken running towards the old abandoned building. I never discovered if the guy in the building and the other in the garden were the same person. Pretty fricked up story. Not urban, but rural. Went out for a hike with a buddy of mine. It was pretty late, maybe 2 AM or so. We were just shooting the crap having a smoke on his property. We walk maybe a mile on his trail and we both just start getting this feeling like we are being watched. We just assume it's just us being high and anxious. We walk maybe another 2 minutes. I turn around and point my phone behind us and just see two eyes staring back in the darkness. I am from a rural area and I know that seeing eyes shine isn't that spooky, but I am talking about small raccoon or cat eyes. These eyes are massive, unblinking and staring straight at us. I feel my skin crawl just thinking about it. I start to freak out and tell him to take a look. He starts to freak out too. He thinks it's a mountain lion, and we shouldn't put our back to it. So we begin this super roundabout way of looping back and heading to his house. The entire way we walk, one person facing forward and the other walking backwards. It took us maybe an hour, and by the time we got back to his house I was shaking from adrenaline and anxiety, but we got back safe. Later that week I heard a mountain lion for the first time in my life, and let me tell you, it's freaking terrifying. Their screams are almost supernatural. Every time I've heard one, I nope the frick back inside. I was exploring an abandoned rehab near my house with 2 of my friends and it had just freshly snowed. Literally while we were exploring, I was approaching one building there when I looked down and saw a very large set of obviously men's footprints in the snow, heading into the building. We continued anyway. We always went prepared to defend ourselves, BC you really never know. And we opened the door to a completely silent, empty building. There was a staircase to a tiny loft and we went up, only to find that someone had cut a makeshift door in the wall and was presumably hanging out in the attic. We opened that door too, and there was still no one. We never saw anyone, but I haven't been back since. It creeped me out far too much. We had finally worked up the courage to explore this super scary looking dilapidated house. It was boarded up really solid. Nobody was getting in and out without a ton of work prying off boards. We searched exhaustively. The easier way in was to just make the damaged drywall on the back wall a little more damaged to widen the hole. As soon as we stepped in, there was something vaguely human shaped at the top of the stairs we both saw. We bolted in terror. Of course, me and my friend were only 9 at the time. Was probably just some homeless dude better at finding entrances than us. Definitely not urban, and more sweet than scary. I was once camping in the desert, at least 30 miles in every direction from any human settlements. When I woke up, there was a full, cold, 5-gallon jug of water outside my tent. My friends and I grew up in a town that had a large abandoned psychiatric hospital. People went in there all the time and we decided senior year of high school to sneak in at 2ish am. We get in with flashlights and start just exploring. We get up to the 3rd floor and start hearing footsteps. We turn the flashlights off and hide in a room. We watch this big black figure shuffle by the door and down the hall. We ran the opposite way to another stairwell and got the frick out. I'm sure it was just some homeless dude or something, but Jesus Christ, we were spooked for a while. Thanks for the creepy image. Back in my teenage hoodlum days, some friends and I did some urban exploration in an abandoned medical facility. It was perched atop a steep hill with only one road in and out, surrounded by a small forest. From what we had heard, this place did some serious procedures, heart surgery and the like. But now it was totally left to rot, or so we thought. We imagined our expedition would be a creepy midnight jaunt through a haunted hospital that we could brag about to our lamer friends. So I drive up this hill and park behind the facility. The first thing we notice is that there are some ambient lights on. The place is not totally off the grid like we were led to believe. No problem. They are probably there just to scare off troublemakers like us. The rest of the facade is dark. There are no cars in the lot. Then, as we're scoping out the exterior, we notice that there's a board over one of the windows. Sure enough, we peel it back and the window is broken. A way in. We waste no time in vaulting up and over, avoiding the edges of the broken glass. Suddenly we're inside and it's clear this place is certainly not abandoned. There are interior lights that come on as we wander around. There's some equipment scattered about. I start to get an uneasy feeling in the pit of my stomach. My friends are enjoying themselves and I don't want to be the weakling who got scared. Yet I can't ignore the sense of pure dread that is getting stronger every second I'm in this place. Finally I tell them that we need to GTFO, and don't bother explaining why. I drove, so they have no choice but to follow me. We scramble back out the window we came in, climb in the car and peel off, turning off the only road that leads up the hill and stopping at a nearby gas station. A few of my friends went inside to get drinks, but a few of us stayed in the car. From the spot where we parked you can see up the hill to the outside of the facility, and we watched as a security car with flashing orange lights pulled up to the front, followed shortly by a cop car. We must have missed them by 2 minutes. Once my friends come back we point out the welcome wagons sitting outside the facility, and after a bout of nervous laughter we head back home and marvel at how lucky we are. If I hadn't listened to my gut, my hoodlum friends and I probably would have spent some time in juvie for breaking and entering. You have been visited by the sleeping Italian. Comment sleep tight Lil Guido for nice spaghetti and meatball dreams all night. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.